Daddy, you are self-referenced.
Hey, what's up? It's Rick Dees in the morning. Right now, VinnDog.
Access granted.
Going live from a 35,000-foot view, the Captain America for Jesus himself, VinnDoggRadio.
Yes, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the show. Thank you very much for being here. Sorry we started a little bit late, but that's all right. It's better late than never. Well, welcome to VinnDoggRadio Live. It's going to be a doozy today, and I promise you it's going to be fun. Please do me a favor right now. Like, share, subscribe if you're on YouTube. If you're on Getter, Gettr, please hit the follow switch. If you are on the infamous Rumble, follow me on Rumble right now and do that real quick, and you can repost and share. And please let us put this podcast into the troposphere. If you're on X, formerly known as Twitter, please hit the follow switch and repost there. It's going to be a doozy today because we have a lot to cover. And sorry for the technical issues, but we got those resolved. And if you feel led on your heart by the Lord to support the podcast, please do. It is in the show notes, and it is also in the ticker on how you can support this podcast to continue to go forward and to spread truth. And yes, we want to get people to the Lord Jesus. That is the most important mission of them all. And we're going to have a great Tuesday conversation today. And we'd like to bring in my friend and, yes, brother in Christ, Mr. John Holler. How you doing, sir?
Oh, Vinny. Okay. Now that I've got my camera working, I'm not sure. I did a thing with Tom Hughes last night, and I had all kinds of camera problems. And so, but I shouldn't say it's, here's a little secret. We recorded it in advance. So we avoided the live thing. By the way, if you're interested, we're having a prophecy roundtable tomorrow night at 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific, at Fellowship Bible Chapel YouTube channel and other platforms. It's going to be me, Tom Hughes, Patrick Wood, Britt Gillette, and Scott Townsend. We're going to be talking about technology, transhumanism, AI, Mark of the Beast technology, all sorts of things. Probably going to go about 2.5 hours. This is about the fifth one, I think, that we've done. So,
I watched the third one you did.
Seemed to be fairly popular. That first one got over 250,000 views. A bunch of old guys sitting around talking about technology. It was kind of amazing. It's sort of like, have you ever seen that Lex Fridman guy?
Yes.
He puts up he's so emotionless, no animation or anything, and he does these interviews, and I forget who he did an interview with, Tucker Carlson or somebody, or Elon Musk. 15 million views, 3 hours and 30 minutes.
Wow.
And it's like, so it's sort of I think it's sort of upending conventional wisdom that people will only listen to things for a short period of time. If the topic's engaging and people are smart, I think people are starved for that compared to regular television. So Fox, where everything is, I was on Fox once, and you get like a 1 minute time frame to present all of your ideas. It's kind of ridiculous.
Yeah, it's kind of like a quick blur, and all of a sudden that's it. Kind of like radio. That's how radio works. Hey, you only have so much time to talk.
Right. And you always got that. I did a radio program, and I know what it's the longest 30 seconds in your life becomes that you have 30 seconds till the break. And then it seems like time slows down, and you're wondering like, okay, what am I going to say to fill up this slide? So anyway, enough of my problems. So I hear you guys are having some wind and fire out there in Southern California. We had snow and about 20 degrees here.
Holy smokes.
So we had we had 5 or 6 inches of snow. I had to fire up the snow blower yesterday, and I don't think we're going to be above freezing for the next 3 weeks.
Oh boy.
My wife goes yesterday morning, went out to do the snow blowing. She goes, "It's freezing out there. It's free." I said, "Pam, It's 28 degrees. If it was 6 degrees warmer and no snow, I would be going out to the golf course. So
Exactly.
and we
Oh,
were
man.
golfing last week, so that's it was 62 degrees a week ago Saturday.
Oh, wow.
So, but
That's a beautiful day for golfing.
yeah, it's gonna be a cool. I think it's gonna be a colder winter. I don't know if we're gonna get not much snow in the forecast. We're turning into Southern California here. We had a very dry summer, and we're gonna have a very dry winter, I think.
We haven't had rain since last spring.
Okay. Yeah, I was out there I was out there a couple times in September and for conferences, and it was 120 degrees when I got up to Woodland Hills.
Oh yeah, that's the one you did with Lee Brainerd and Brandon
Holthouse,
right?
And Tom and a bunch of other guys. Then I did the one in Temecula in early November.
Yes, I was there.
Yeah, you were there. We actually tried to do a podcast and things. We had some technical issues the one night and then redid it the next night, I think.
Yeah, we did. We redid it the following day.
So is there anything to talk about? Do you got any questions?
Boy, oh boy. I wanted to show you some footage of this fire that's happening in Pacific Palisades. One of my friends from KTLA 5 Los Angeles sent this to me.
Now that's out there near the Getty Museum, right?
Now. So this is
yes.
Palisades. All of these cars were ditched. So all of the drivers panicked. They took their keys. This is Palisades Drive as well as Sunset Boulevard. This dozer is just moving these vehicles out of the way. So if this is your car, unfortunately, it's an emergency situation, and this is what they have to do.
So allegedly, reportedly, a lot of people started running from their cars because they couldn't get through. So they got out of the cars and ran.
Well, self-preservation is a powerful thing, I guess. I've never been, I've seen a lot of fires out there. I've been close to them, and they can change. It's kind of funny when you see something, people from Ohio, we go out there and then we see a fire and everybody's like, oh my goodness, is a fire going to come get us? And in Southern California, it's like, hey, is this going to make the line longer at in and out or something like that? That's what they're most concerned about. I hope it doesn't hit while I'm in the line at in and out.
Yeah, I'm trying to get my double. That's
right. Yeah. I don't want any smoke on my fries,
Hey, smoking mountain fries.
But it can change pretty quickly. I remember having spent a lot of time in Southern California at my in-laws in Upland. We can remember winters where everything burned. You go down, we drove down to San Diego, everything burned. Then the next winter, you had a lot of rain, and the hills down there around Temecula looked like Hawaii.
Yeah.
They looked like a jungle. And then the next year, they were burnt. All that stuff dried up and was burning. So,
yeah.
Anyway, so there are a few things going on in the world. So wherever you want to start, I'll follow your lead.
All right. Before we go across the Atlantic or across the Pacific, there was a question.
Now, are we still going to call them the Atlantic?
I don't know what we're going to call it anymore.
We're going to call it the West American Ocean and the East American Ocean, maybe?
The East American Ocean and the West American Ocean.
Yeah. I don't even think Trump's thought of that one yet.
Oh, speaking of Trump, somebody asked a question. Do you seriously think that Trump was serious about purchasing Greenland because they're rich in zinc and copper, oil, gas, etc.?
Well, he says it's, I have never thought of Greenland as being particularly strategic land from a geopolitical standpoint. But, it is there in the north. He may be trying to fend off the Russians who seem to be moving into the Arctic. There's geopolitical reasons for wanting to be up there because the Russians sort of view the Arctic as their playground. And, there's a lot of oil and gas and that type of thing. And then within Greenland, supposedly there are a lot of rare earth minerals. I don't know how many there are. I think he's probably serious about it. When we talk about the Bible prophecy standpoint, though, I was just texting with Pete Garcia about this. It looks very much like the old North American Union that people were talking about, or the North American Union, the North American region that were talked about in some of the Agenda 21 and Sustainable Development Goals, and where they divided the world into like Club of Rome, and then the UN divided the world into 10 regions.
Yes.
And so the North American Union region included the United States, Canada, and Greenland. So that, and so as soon as you say that, everybody will say, well, Trump must be the beast. And therefore he's trying to set up the world into the, it's one of these pen to tail and Antichrist type things that we see.
Yeah.
I don't know how many American presidents I've lived through. Probably the most unbiblical one, in my view. Well, that's hard to say. If you look at it in terms of Israel, the two worst ones have been Barack Obama, Joe Biden, which was the third Barack Obama administration, and Jimmy Carter, who I know it's not good to speak ill of the dead. So I'll try to say something positive about Jimmy Carter, because Jimmy Carter was president while I was in law school.
Give him a bag of peanuts.
And so I would say that the only thing that Jimmy Carter excelled at was being wrong on every major issue geopolitically and economically while he was in an area of influence. And then he doubled down on those errors when he left office. So he excelled at being wrong.
That's good. That's good to know that he excelled at being wrong.
He was a despicable president. He was a despicable human being. He played nice with Yasser Arafat and Hamas and those terror organizations. He completely did not understand the Middle East. It was during his tenure that the Shah in Iran was overthrown, and the mullahs that were now having a very serious discussion about whether there's going to be a major air campaign against their nuclear weapons development facilities. This will be the next 2 weeks. Trump will be sworn in just about in 13 days, theoretically.
Right.
He was certified as the winner yesterday. He's supposed to be sentenced by the judge in New York on Friday.
What a farce.
This is crazy. I mean, I can't even believe we're talking about these things. Like, I mean, do we live in a banana republic or the greatest country ever devised? As a lot of us have thought that America was most of my life. But so there you have this juxtaposition of Donald Trump, speaking, and he's not even president, and everybody's treating him like he is. And then we're going to, and then Jimmy Carter will be laying in state in the Capitol tomorrow. So this is, it's a very strange juxtaposition of everything that we see happening.
Right.
So the question was about Greenland. I think he's probably, I don't think he's joking about it. I think he's serious. Now, to be honest with you, having followed his career and his policies and that type of thing, I don't think this ever came up. So I don't know if this is going to be a payback for Elon Musk, whose company needs lithium and that type of thing for their batteries. I don't know. Maybe Musk is going to go up there and set up a space launch facility that that won't get the complaints of people about sonic booms from where he's launching things.
From Torrance.
Is he doing it from out there?
I think he did. Yes, I think so.
Well, I'm sure the people in Southern California like that a lot. This is it's such a strange world. So here you have the richest guy in the world maybe telling Trump what to do, and maybe now he's trying to tell the UK what to do, which is, I'm all for him telling the UK what to do because they need a lot of help.
Yeah, they need Jesus.
They do. There's a huge scandal over there with the grooming gangs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I've invested sex abuse cases, and I will tell you that the only thing that you accomplish when you investigate those is you get everybody mad at you. Because
of course.
nobody thinks you're handling it the right way, and everybody can second guess everything that you've done. So my view of that is, I'm aware of the thing at Daystar. I haven't really spoken publicly about it. If you think your kid's been abused, call the cops. That's what you do. Don't go to the head of the ministry or anything like that. You know what I mean? Go call the cops. They're the ones that are set up for it.
Right.
And if they think there's enough evidence, they'll try the person. And if the jury doesn't think that the guy's guilty, they'll find him not guilty. So, or they don't think it's you proving your case, they'll find him not guilty. So there are people set up to do that. I just don't know that a church or a ministry is set up to do that type of investigation. And certainly there are many factors that I don't think a lot of people consider. So I've been involved in them. I will say that some of the worst times of my life, to be honest with you.
Well, you know what? I just have to say I'm not a Daystar ministry guy.
Well, I'm no, this is separate and apart from whether you think Daystar is good or bad on balance. There's some good people on there. There's some bad people on there. But then again, Vinny, the way I look at it is we're on YouTube with a lot of really crazy people too.
Yeah. Hey, you know what? Everybody is a part of some type of oligarch.
That's right. And I had a ministry friend. He went to be with the Lord about 16 or 17 years ago. And he was on some of these networks, and people used to just get on his case. And he said, listen, I rent office space next to creepy people. I live in an apartment. I used to live in an apartment when I was in college near creepy people. Am I supposed to be tagged with everything that's wrong with them? I just judge me on what what my message is. And, there's some truth to that. There's some truth to that. So, but like I said, you can criticize Daystar for some of the adjacent people, the crazy people that they have that are on that network. I get that. Okay. But then again, we're on YouTube, and YouTube is filled. Last I checked, YouTube is filled with a lot of real nuts and really some not so great content.
Hey, Smiling Joe is also on YouTube.
Oh, is he?
Yeah. Smiling Joe from Houston.
Oh, yeah.
So you can't get away from him either way.
Yeah, I always love his intro where he says, hold it up. This is my Bible, and then he
never reads from it.
Never refers to it again. So kind of the classic. It's his church meets in a former basketball arena, so that's sort of his head fake.
Yeah,
that he does holding up his Bible.
The former Compact Center.
Yeah. So, but you got there was a ministry guy. I'm going to forget his last name. His first Ed Decker. And we were out in Palm Springs. It was me and Bill Salas and Eric Barger taking him to dinner.
Oh, okay.
And we're driving to dinner, and we drive by this big modern church, one of the big box churches, that's either a church or a Walmart. And Ed goes, and Ed has a very dry sense of humor, one of the great Christian apologists of our lifetime. And he says, John, I went to the church over there once. That's the largest church out here in the valley in Palm Springs. And he said, the pastor was just doing a fantastic job. He said he was really bringing it. And then the fog machine malfunctioned. and kind of ruined everything.
Oh
I
my!
think it got stuck on fog or something like that. And he said
Oh
it was
my!
a perfect metaphor. But it was just very funny because it's true. You wonder about. You can get too tied up with the logistics of being, the right
Mhm.
kind of music, the right kind of atmosphere.
Mhm.
So back to Greenland. I digress. I've gone down to 18 rabbit trails since the question was asked.
Oh,
I
okay.
think Trump is
counted
serious.
18.
I think Trump is serious about Greenland.
Yeah. It sounds about right. But yeah, I'm all about I'm all about pastors just giving the word.
Yeah.
Preaching. I want preaching. I don't want a fog machine and laser rays and all that other stuff.
Yeah, I've been to a lot of churches in my day, and I like music, but sometimes I think it gets too much emphasis. So
All right. So we're gonna take a trip down genealogy lane, I think, here.
Oh,
It
really?
turns out you're related to Angelina Jolie. You're also cousins with Madonna.
So what do you think about all that, John?
Blood sisters, huh?
Yeah.
I don't know how much I should say, but back in the 20 some years ago, I had one of the biggest cases of my career. One of the attorneys I was working with was located in DC, and she had giant pictures of that person on her wall.
Really?
Yeah, she's a superb. The person I was working with, she's a superb attorney,
Right.
and so Hillary would call while I was in the office. I don't know if she had it done because she was trying to impress me or what. It did impress me much, but anyway, so that's about as close as I've coming to that person. I find her to be a rather despicable person.
Oh, she's heinous.
Yeah, and I don't think Madonna or Angelina Jolie are any great things to say, hey, I'm related to those persons. If I was, I don't think I would say that.
I wouldn't even make that public, but here's more.
That's true. So, and I'm related to Madonna and Halle Berry.
Related, in fact, to Abraham Lincoln. Your family is that true?
Nancy Hanks was Abraham Lincoln's mother. So, yeah.
Barack Obama and Sarah Palin are cousins, back to one Mr. Smith of the 1600s.
Like related, for real?
Yes.
What's the connect?
We're second or third cousins. Yeah.
Really?
Yes.
You are related to Fred Rogers.
No, impossible. No, you're pulling our leg.
All right.
Let's look at that.
How far away is it?
Wait, look at it.
I know, yeah, I'm never.
Oprah tried to say that you two are somehow, some way related.
Yeah, she said she actually researched it and found it to be true.
And that's so.
Some kind of Presley with a Winfrey hooked up somewhere along the line in the South. You know how it goes.
Cousin Oprah.
That's right.
And that President Obama is related to all but one U.S. president.
Well, Dan, the youngster spent the summer tracing the family tree of our presidents. Her conclusion that all the presidents, with the exception of one, share the same grandfather.
That President Obama and all the presidents before him, with the exception of one, are related and descendants of a former king of England.
No, they are all cousins and they're grandsons of John Laughlin.
Well, lots
so,
of
here's sort of a related factoid. You remember the famous campaign was actually an Ohio guy, William Henry Harrison and John Tyler. Tippecanoe and Tyler too was the campaign. I think it was back in the 1840 presidential election. Harrison won. He went down to the inauguration. He had a cold. He gave one of the longest inaugural addresses in history outside, got sick, came down with double pneumonia, and 30 days later he was dead. So John Tyler, the vice, I'm pretty sure this is the right guy. John Tyler was sworn in as president. He served as president. I don't know if he ran for election in the next election or not. But Tyler, he got, I think his first wife died and he got remarried, and he had a couple of children in his 70s. Well, then one of those children, one of the sons of Tyler, he had like 12 or 13 children, I think.
Well, he was
one
a
of
busy
his
man.
sons, he himself got married late and had children in his 70s. So this is a guy who was actually born in the Tyler was born in 1780s or 1790, around the time that George Washington was president. So he's like the 9th president of the United States, has children in his 70s. One of his sons has children in his 70s. And at least the last time I checked a year ago, two of his grandsons were still alive.
Really?
Yeah. Living in Virginia. They were in their 90s. Can you imagine that? The 8th or 9th president of the United States has grandchildren that are living while we're alive.
That's incredible. That is incredible.
It's one. And so with regard to listen, if you go back further, you and I are cousins too, I think. We're all
related. Thanks to Noah.
Right. Speaking, I mentioned DC. So I had another big case, and I had an expert witness in DC. And it was a legal malpractice case. So I had to hire an expert on this legal issue to prove that the attorney, I was representing the plaintiff, and the attorney had done something wrong. So I went down to meet with my expert witness, and we started talking, and he said, well, I used to be the chief legal counsel of this federal agency. And then his wife called, and he goes, oh yeah, she's a partner over at this firm, but she used to be the chief legal counsel of this federal agency. And then he brought up his ex-wife, she was chief legal counsel of another federal agency. And so every time I went to DC, I kind of started trying to, in my head, I was sort of mapping out all of the interconnections. And I decided maybe this is why people seem a little less than bright in DC sometimes, because they're intermarried more than European royalty.
Yeah, a lot of inbreeding going on.
Yeah, they call it I think the technical term is breeding their brains out. So that's kind of but it's true. I mean, it seems like, who else are you related to in the government? So anyway, back to Hillary Clinton. Yeah, so I was working with an attorney who was one of Hillary's best friends.
Oh, oh my.
Yeah, so it was, I think she kind of figured out pretty early on that I wasn't really aligned with her on political issues. So, and she had worked for Bill at the White House, as counsel at the White House, this lady, this attorney that I was using. A superb attorney, just first rate, but just really wrong politically. So get that, she's Bill Clinton's attorney, but she's one of Hillary's best friends. So
wow.
Do the math on that.
Yeah. That's a lot of figuring on that one.
I think we're all sort of interrelated. And so the next question going to be, is King Charles the Antichrist? Yeah, there have been books written about that. So I'm taking a wait and see approach on the identity of the Antichrist.
Yeah. Look,
I don't think
Charles is too old.
Yet.
He's too old to be the Antichrist.
Well, and you think about the Pope as the false prophet, and no fan of him. He's certainly a candidate for it. But, he's up, what is he, like 86 now?
Yeah, he's like 86, approaching the coffin. Or whatever they do to him over there.
Well, he seems to be hanging on. I mean, he was I was just talking to a friend of mine in Israel about the Pope's visit to Bethlehem in 2014, where he did a mass at Nativity Square outside the Church of the Nativity, probably the oldest church in Christendom. And the baby Jesus was lying in a manger wrapped in a Palestinian keffiyeh scarf.
Wow, what an insult to Jesus.
Jesus was a Palestinian. Joseph had a keffiyeh on also. And Mary in the mural behind the Pope, I have pictures of it, looked like she was dressed in a burqa.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
True story.
Wow. This doesn't surprise me though, John, with all this stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it's, and so now we have this issue. I hope to be doing a roundtable with some friends on this issue. Because I think it's a very, very important issue that the church needs to address, is this Palestinian Jesus issue. Jesus was a Palestinian refugee. This is just complete nonsense. But the proponents of it, they're liberation theologians. They're Marxist, communist, whatever you want to call them.
Mm-hmm.
And they believe in the oppression of they believe in the oppression of, we white people came from Europe and we oppressed everybody here, and everybody here was living this pristine, glorious life in the paradise of America.
Oh.
And it's just complete nonsense. I remember years ago. So this is how an attorney thinks. So you always think of asking a question that's difficult to answer. So today, my wife and I I was getting ready to leave, and I was looking in a closet for a sweatshirt to put on.
Mm-hmm.
And my head is in the closet, and she goes, "What are you looking for?" And I said, "You mean, what am I looking for in the closet or out of life?" And she goes, "Don't turn off the lawyer mode, dude, and go do your errands." We were at a national park once. We were at Mesa Verde in southwestern Colorado.
I heard that's really nice. It was a really nice park.
Yeah, it's very unique. We're at the cliff dwellings, and you're at this big cliff dwelling, and there's a creek there, and they talk about how these pristine. It was kind of interesting to listen to the rangers. So this is 20 years ago, but we humans in the 20th century, 21st century, we're causing global warming and we're destroying the world. But what he said was, well, they came and lived here and they farmed it so much that they changed the climate, and they had to leave because the cliff dwellings were just like all of a sudden abandoned.
Right.
And he said, so they lived here along the creek and everything. And so I said, do you think they peed in the creek? And he didn't really want to answer me. So, and my wife kind of gave me that look like, don't do that when I'm around, Don't ask a question like that when I'm around. So, but it's true. I mean, we think that but they engaged in cannibalism. They fought bloody wars. They didn't get along. They were tribal. They hated other tribes and they slaughtered other tribes. And so nothing really changed when it was just different people in charge.
Well,
but this colonialism narrative, this is rearing its head in Israel. With the Palestinian issue, the Fakistinian issue, I should say.
Mm-hmm.
So I just think that
you mean the residents of Gaza?
Yeah. By the way, 2 years ago, I went to Shabbat dinner with some friends that live in Judea. They live in the area called the West Bank. And before they moved to that area, they lived in Gaza.
Mm-hmm.
And in 2005, they were kicked out of Gaza by the Israeli government.
Right.
And so Gaza became Jew-free. I've got pictures on my computer of taken in Gaza, beach resorts, shopping malls. And it's interesting, now they're putting out these videos of Gaza, of what Gaza was like before Israel came in after October 7th. And it's like, it's this beautiful apartment complexes and condos and beachfront homes and shopping malls and pristine looking cities.
Mm-hmm.
But then they also say that they were oppressed by Israel.
That's funny.
So now they're putting out videos about how wonderful Gaza was before Israel came in.
Mm-hmm.
I still think Israel has some problems in Gaza. They're going to have to get that cleaned up. I think it's been they let the problem get out of control. They thought they could manage the problem, and I think the thing was they needed to defeat their enemy, eradicate them, and humiliate them. And then there would be peace.
Yeah, but
by the way, can I just interject?
Oh yeah, this is black and this is white.
Okay. So
I was going to do that because I saw a pastor do that at church once.
What do they think that Jesus is going to do when he comes back?
Oh man, he's going to throttle him.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's a lot. I mean, read the end chapters of the book. There's great stuff coming.
Yeah.
But there's some really bloody, messes. What does it say in Isaiah? Is it 63 or 66? Who is this who comes from Basra? With robes dipped in the blood of his enemies. Ooh. That's Jesus.
Yeah.
I mean, what do people think is going to happen when Jesus returns? It's not
going to be pretty for the people that are not on his side.
No, and if you look at the saints under the throne and the fifth seal.
Yes.
Okay, so these are redeemed people of God. Apparently in heaven. And also it appears that they're aware of what's going on the earth. This is kind of an interesting thing. And what do they say? Lord, when are you going to go avenge us? When are you going to go and pour out your wrath on these people? And I've often been kind of struck by that. Like, those are the people of God that want God to pour out his wrath on the ungodly. And they're in heaven. You would think that, they're in this. Why are they doing that? Because they want the prophecies to be fulfilled and they want Jesus to do what needs to be done. And they're asking for vengeance.
Yeah.
And
I'm waiting for him to do it too, so that we can get our new bodies.
Jesus doesn't respond and say, "Oh, you guys have it all wrong." What does he say?
Rest a little while, I think.
Rest a little while.
Yes.
And then. So sometimes I think we need to kind of reorient ourselves as to what God's plan really is. That doesn't mean we're supposed to do it. God will take care of that, but we need to be on board with it, I guess.
That's for sure. That is for sure. So yeah, I had to do that demonstration with the headphone case and the paper. Because everybody always tries to play the black and white card. I'm like, oh, so you're the color of a sheet of paper and you're the color of my headphone case. Cool.
I never really anyway, the whole racial thing has been kind of I just have never understood the hatred that some people have towards other races. I don't.
Me neither. Me neither. Me neither.
And I grew up. I'm 70 years old, so I grew up in the 60s
Mm.
when a lot of this was coming. The riots and that type of thing. I was 11 years old. I was in Long Beach, California.
Oh, wow.
At our church's national conference during the LA riots.
Wow. So you were there doing the Watts riots, huh?
Yeah, we actually went up to Chinatown for dinner, and you could see the smoke when you're driving through LA and stuff.
Mhm.
And one of the guys in Long Beach, he heard a disturbance. It kind of spilled over into Long Beach, and
Yikes.
he stuck his head out his hotel window to see what was going on, and somebody took a shot at him. One of the pastors at the conference. So, so I was, I remember that. I remember LA. I remember Detroit and Chicago and all that stuff. So it was it was a turbulent time.
Wow.
And we really mistreated a lot of people over the years. I mean, there were things that needed to be dealt with.
Well, yeah. Well, the Rockefellers and the Malthusians, they really propagated all this stuff to pit everybody against one another. That was their plan anyway. So,
by the way, speaking of the Rock, I feel like I'm taking you down a bunch of rabbit trails. But I think this is so we're doing like word association prophecy update stuff tonight. So John D. Rockefeller was from Cleveland.
He was an Ohioan, huh?
Yep.
Yikes.
And that's when he started Standard Oil and that type of thing. I'm trying to pull up a picture of his. He was considered to be a great Baptist. But I want to show you a picture of his.
Okay.
I don't know if I can do this. I'll
you can share the screen, and I'll pop it up for you.
Okay, so he was a Northern Baptist, very religious. But this is, let's see here. Hang on a second.
That's kind of interesting, to hear that he was a Baptist too. I remember somebody else saying that. Like, this guy?
So this is Rockefeller's grave. Did I get it?
Okay, yeah, I think so. Yeah, here it is, right here. There we go. Oh, wow.
That's Rockefeller's grave in Lakeview Cemetery in East Cleveland, Ohio.
That's a pyramid, isn't it?
It's an obelisk.
An obelisk. Oh, it almost looks like a pyramid almost.
Yeah, it is. Let me see if I can find another one that's a little bit.
And ladies and gentlemen, for those of you who are going to be listening on the audio version, we're just showing pictures of
Okay.
Wow.
That's it says Rockefeller there.
Wow, it's like they made a shrine for him.
Well, he was a Mason, okay?
Skull and bones.
And that's an obelisk. And by the way, Rockefeller's and by the way, this was a largely Baptist cemetery in Cleveland. And I've been there. That's what I do when I go to Cleveland on business. I go to the courthouse and then I go out to the graveyard. But I had a friend who kind of told me about this, but it was clear that he was a Freemason. And there's obelisks all over the cemetery. So when you up the hill from his tomb. Let's see if I can get this.
Because I've shown a lot of quotes of his to people too.
Okay, do you see this here?
Oh my, what in the world?
This is a tower. It is the second largest presidential mausoleum in the United States of all the presidents who've been buried.
Right.
It's the tomb of James Garfield.
Wow.
James Garfield was only president for about 8 months.
Yeah, he didn't last very long.
He was an attorney from Mentor, Ohio, up there east of Cleveland along the lake. And he was also a minister in, I believe, the Disciples of Christ or United Church of Christ. So when he was assassinated and died, they raised money to build this mausoleum to him.
Yikes.
And in the I don't know if I can show this within that let's see. So within this mausoleum, at the lower levels, this is the casket of Garfield and the casket of his wife.
Oh, right, they put them right next to each other, huh?
Right there in the open, and you can see in the back left-hand corner that through the grate there, through the gate, a guy looking. And so the caskets are right there in the open. You can almost reach out and touch them. And in the floor of the, I'm only pointing this out because we think all these people were pristine and stuff. Let me see here.
See, I caused John to go down this rabbit trail with me, guys.
I know. I don't know if I should do this, but okay. So in the floor outside his grave, this is what's in the floor.
Hey, wait a minute. Oh, my.
What does that look like? It's reverse of a Nazi swastika. But this is in the mosaic tile floor of this thing that was built and opened to the public about 1890. So about 135 years ago.
Wow.
And when you go down there, there's a display case of some of his personal effects, but sort of tucked in the corner of the display case is the schematic, the rendering, the conceptual rendering of the architect who designed this monument.
Yikes.
And what it is, it's the center. You see how steep that roof was?
Yes, that was a very steep roof.
Here we go. Here's another picture of it. There we go. That's a better picture of it.
Wow.
It was pretty dirty from all the pollution. They've just restored it. But it's this, and there's all these Masonic symbols, like in the floor. That's a sun god symbol. And this is considered to be the center part of a pyramid. That's what the architect was going for.
Yeah.
So clearly Freemason. So this is the church minister lawyer from Mentor, Ohio. And this is, so if you go behind this mausoleum and go down the hill, you run into Rockefeller's obelisk above his grave.
Wow.
Maybe the richest man who ever lived, by the way. At least in American history. Probably worth, so Elon Musk is worth about 400 billion now. And today,
so it went up from 222 million now? 22 billion? Wow.
Doubled since the election.
Holy smokes.
And so, but Rockefeller probably controlled a fortune of around $900 billion in today's dollars.
Yeah.
So very, very wealthy guy. Yeah. But it's just kind of, it's sort of like these things in American history that we don't really want to talk about because there's a dark aspect to it. So, and now I'm way down the trail on all these conspiracy theories, and I'm not a real conspiracy theorist. I try to be very factual. And when I say, and I grew up in Canton, Ohio till I was 15, and Canton, Ohio was the home of William McKinley.
President William McKinley.
President after Garfield, about 20 years. And he was at an exposition in Buffalo, New York, and was shot and killed, assassinated.
Yes,
And
I did read that.
And so I used to take when I was a younger guy, I played the trombone, and so my music lessons were in a music store right across the street from the church where McKinley used to attend church. It had the McKinley pew, family pew, and that type of thing. But McKinley's monument is also he was a Mason also, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a big part of American history that we don't really want to admit. And now all the people who think this about Trump are
right.
Let's see if I can. Yeah, there you go. There's the McKinley Monument in Canton, Ohio.
Wow, that's some tribute to him.
Right. I mean, yeah, I know. It's like, Washington's got this little tiny grave. Jefferson's got a little tiny grave. And so this guy, Garfield, who was only president for 8 months, has this giant mausoleum. I don't understand what the thinking was about this. So anyway.
Wow.
So that's my contribution for.
That was your contribution to the rabbit trail.
That's right. Yeah. So now we're completely off track. And
you know what? Sometimes these unplanned conversations are the best.
Yeah. So now I'm trying to figure out, how do I shut off this sharing thing?
Okay. Let me do that for you.
Okay.
I think I can do it. Let's see. Huh. I don't think he wants to go away. Let's see.
Well, I can shut down that. If I shut that down, I'm going to shut down my.
Yeah, you don't want to do that.
So anyway, it's somewhere it says, do you want to stop sharing? But then it just. Oh, there we go.
I got rid of it.
It said stop sharing. I saw a thing down below.
So
we're highly trained live stream professionals here.
Yeah.
At VinnDoggRadio.
Yeah, don't forget to tip us at the end, folks. Try the VO while you're here.
If the tips are large enough, we'll actually do something like hire a staff.
Yeah. So since we went down this rabbit trail, have you ever seen this video?
We're both in Skull and Bones, the secret society.
It's so secret we can't talk about it.
What does that mean for America? The conspiracy theorists are going to go wild.
I'm sure they are. I don't know. I haven't seen the web.
Number 322.
You both.
W.
And Lurch, John Kerry.
You know what? I always call him Wafflehead. He just.
Yeah, there's someone. So if I had to rank who I have the least respect for, Jimmy Carter and John Kerry are probably running a close, first and second in that.
Mm-hmm.
At the bottom feeders of American politics, American political history.
Yeah.
So look, I do think that this is part of our history. I think it's something that we've got to deal with. Now, I to be honest with you, I don't focus on it in what I do that much, but I do find that this is very interesting information. I always say it because it's for me living in Ohio, it's kind of local.
Right.
And it's like accessible. And I've had people tell me about this, and I've gone and, I've gone to these. I grew up around not too far from the McKinley Monument, and I've been to the one in Cleveland a number of times.
Right.
I don't know. It's just, it's something we need to be aware of, I guess.
Absolutely. And here's John Kerry's same answer.
Both were members of Skull and Bones, a secret society at Yale. What does that tell us? Not much, because it's a secret. Is there a secret handshake? Is there a secret code? I wish there were something secret I could manifest. 322, a secret number? There are all kinds of secrets, Tim, but one thing is not a secret. I disagree with this president's direction that he's taking the country. We can do a better job, and I intend to do it.
Tim Russert,
the moderator of Meet the Press and NBC's Washington bureau chief, collapsed and died early this afternoon.
That's suspicious. That's very suspicious.
Well, I'm sure it was just a coincidence.
Yeah. Hey, Tim Russert was not afraid to ask those questions.
No, but he didn't get an answer. Well, he got an answer.
He got an answer. It was just
wasn't
like,
very informative. I guess.
No, they skated around that answer.
So anyway, so what was the question about Greenland?
Oh yeah, you said yes. He will.
This is just kind of free association stuff here.
Yeah.
So that's why I have Tom Hughes come in and moderate the roundtables, so we don't end up down these rabbit trails.
I don't know. I like sometimes, hey, sometimes the conversation just goes there, and I'm like, hey, that's kind of cool because there were certain things that I didn't know about McKinley.
Yeah, he was. I mean, he clearly, having grown up in the town where he was from, I know enough that. And I don't know what the influence of Freemasons are today. You understand what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. None of us have an idea.
I was just thinking about this the other day because I was listening to a podcast and they were talking about the Oslo Accords.
Mm-hmm.
And the Oslo Accords were signed on September 13th, 1993 in Washington, D.C. on the White House lawn in front of 3,000 witnesses. And we're still dealing with the after effects of the Oslo Accords.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And, there was and during the campaign, Bill Clinton gave sort of a tearful rendition of what happened at the Oslo Accords. I can't believe that Yasser Arafat didn't agree because we're giving him everything, 98.9% of everything he wanted to achieve peace. And I just happened to I was in DC on business on September 13th, 1993, 30 years ago. Well, now 31 years ago.
So you were there.
Yeah, I'd had a deposition and it was because of the way there's a curfew at Reagan National Airport. So my deposition got done too late to get home that night. So I spent the night and I thought, well, I've got my air ticket back the next evening on the last flight out. So I'll just go down to the Capitol. And I've always had this impression when I go, my impression of Washington, D.C., and I know about all the way it's laid out and all this other stuff.
Right.
But when you're there, if you pay attention, has this very imperial vibe to it. And I remember one time I think it was on that trip, I was kind of going down to the Capitol and trying to find a place to park. And I was thinking like, did people who went to Rome feel like this when they went to Rome and ancient Rome and they saw these imposing buildings and structures and that? And I'm like, this is our Rome. Now, I don't know what implications to draw from that, but that's what the impression I had was this is an imperial capital in some fashion, because the buildings, the way it's laid out and the Capitol building itself is incredible edifice. So I went to the Capitol, by the way, went over to the House of Representatives to hear them. They were having the first hearings that day. Was Secretary of Labor Robert Reich, the guy who was Secretary of Treasury, and another guy from the Clinton administration, talking about this great thing called NAFTA, the North American Free Trade Agreement, which kind of is rearing its head again with, I think, the way Trump is sort of talking about reconstituting America with Canada and Greenland. And so I sat at the hearings for a while, watched them, and then I went over to one of my good friends from high school, was a congressman from Arizona, Democrat, and lefty, real lefty, but a good friend, really good friend, and Jewish. And we talked about, so I went over there and he came over and we spent the rest of the day together, went out to dinner and stuff. And he had been at the White House the day before as they signed these Oslo Accords, and he was talking about how significant that was to him as a Jewish person to be there when that was happening.
Oh, wow.
So it's kind of weird. I just happened, like I said, it just wasn't planned. I just happened to be in DC and have a free day. So it was
quite interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a strange day. But, and so it's historically significant and prophetically significant too, as we see the things unfolding in Israel right now. So
yeah. So let's talk about Israel real quick.
Okay.
So I heard that they've kind of did some manufacturing with their arsenal, and they're selling it to people.
Who did?
Israel.
Okay.
And
they're one of the biggest arms dealers in the world.
Yeah. And the cool part about that I heard about it was that Israel is actually controlling the dynamics, like, okay, about how they're going to use that stuff. And I'm like, that's kind of cool. I think that's really cool.
Yeah, I mean, look, we so as we were talking earlier, it was kind of my mind flashed to Candace Owens.
Oh gosh, her, man, my goodness.
Well, just because I like to have negative thoughts every now and then, and it's it kind of gives me a shot of adrenaline and ticks me off, and therefore I can get through the rest of the day. I don't have to drink coffee or anything. And the one thing I was just talking with a friend today. We're going to try to set up an interview with a guy named Trevor Loudon. And Trevor's a New Zealand guy, but loves America.
I've heard of him.
And he did an interview back in August at kind of a libertarian website called Rare Foundation, RAIR Foundation.
Oh, okay.
And I don't know what it stands for, but they're sort of conservative libertarian types. He gave a very interesting interview, and the interview said that we have a problem with the woke right. He was the first guy that I saw that really put it in these terms. We have a problem with the woke right in America. People like Candace Owens and Tucker Carlson that are falling for pure Russian communist propaganda that leads to Jew hatred and pushes the communist agenda, but people think they're part of the right. So when I look at how these things are going to form in the end times, I think that we need to be aware of the woke people on both sides, on the right and the left. And Candace has become a big problem. She's extremely anti-Jewish, anti-Israel. I had people unfriending me last week because I said that on a podcast. But I stand by it. She is a big, big problem. She's complete.
She's a huge anti-Semite.
She seems to have lost. You hope that she doesn't really believe it, that it's just a grift that she's doing to make money. But maybe she really believes it. And so we were talking about this. We talked a little bit earlier about Palestinian Jesus. That's all part of this too, this liberation theology. And it's leaking over to the right, like people like Candace Owens, who's converted to Roman Catholicism, by the way. And she said the other day, she's going to have on her program soon a Catholic guy named E. Michael Jones. E. Michael Jones is one of the worst Jew haters on planet Earth. And I'm going to tell you, it will be a softball interview. He'll never be challenged by her. And it'll be he is a complete Holocaust denier.
Oh, so he's like a Daryl Cooper 2.0, huh?
That's right. And so Candace has said she's going to drop an interview of him in the next week or so that she's done. And I'm just telling you, there's something. And so when you talk to a guy like Trevor Loudon and go to Rare Foundation Rumble channel, you can find Trevor Loudon pretty easily if you just do a search. About a 37-minute talk, but understand that a lot of this is fed by Russian propaganda. Just like back in the 60s when I was 10 years old, there was a new people group that came up in the world. It was called the Palestinians. They never really existed before. The only time that they had existed were the Jewish people who lived in what's now Israel.
Right.
They were called Palestinians.
And that was an insult.
I have a New York Times headline,
Mm-hmm.
and it says, Arab countries to boycott Palestinian goods. It's from the 1940s, front page, New York Times.
Mm-hmm.
Well, now, wait a minute. Why would Arabs be boycotting Palestinian Arab goods? Well, it's because they weren't Palestinian Arab goods. They were Jewish goods manufactured by Jewish people who were called Palestinians at the time.
Right.
And people like Candace Owens are completely incapable of doing things like research, looking through the facts and that type of thing. So I think that I'm concerned about that. And Trevor's conclusion is that a lot of this is ideological, theological, and a lot of it's driven by Russian propaganda, which is still a real thing.
Yes.
So, and I get in trouble whenever I say something like that. And
good.
I don't like. I mean, I have friends in Ukraine. I have spent a lot of time talking with them over the last few years during this war and that type of thing. And so you'll see Tucker Carlson do an interview with a guy like Putin. You'll see him do an interview with this Palestinian Arab pastor, quote, Pastor Munther Isaac from Bethlehem,
right,
who has completely adopted this Christ at the checkpoint. Jesus was a Palestinian. It's this woke Marxist liberation theology thing. And the Pope is a big part of it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And so they've turned Jesus into a Palestinian refugee. And it's not true. Jesus was Jewish.
This we know.
Judea, was born in Judea. So I don't know. And we're seeing the interesting thing is we're seeing all of this come to a head in our time, right in front of our eyes. And it's very prophetic the way the nations are lining up.
And it's like I addressed yesterday. A lot of the people over at InfoWars are big anti-Israel people too.
Yeah, and so Trevor does an excellent job talking about how this is infecting the right. And so I think we need to call it the woke right. Listen, Vinny, it's so crazy to me. I can't even begin to explain what the thought process is of the people that have fallen into this. It just doesn't make any sense to me.
I tell you one thing, John, I've lost a lot of so-called friends because I'm like, I am not falling for that con job, that you guys are falling for when it comes to Israel. They're like, well, don't you think? I'm like, no, it's come on. You guys are being played with all this stuff.
Okay. So I don't want to I could talk about this all night because you know me.
Yeah.
And, so let's bring it down to something that we can grasp with what's going on in the actual world right now. And I've talked about it with Tom Hughes last night on his podcast.
Yeah, I watched too. It was good.
This thing in Syria is a very big deal. I mean, I've been watching Syria for a lot of years. And the thing in Syria is kind of bringing to a head a lot of different issues that relate very directly to Bible prophecy.
Yes, it does.
So in Syria, over the last, so we were in Israel in March of 2011. We were staying at the Sea of Galilee, and there's a resort there at the southern end. We were on a tour, And I got up the morning we were there, and we're getting ready to head into Jerusalem, and down to Beit Shan and down through the Jezreel Valley. We're going to go down to Masada and then back up to Jerusalem. But there was the news reports were that there were these riots going on in Dara, Syria. Well, if you look at a map from where we were, Dara was 30 miles away. So it's sort of like, see, what's 30 minutes? 30 miles, that's like how far you guys out in California drive for a cup of coffee, right?
Pretty much.
Or an In-N-Out. Well, you don't need to drive 30 miles for an In-N-Out.
Oh, no, we just drive 3 miles and In-N-Out's right there.
Right. So, but we had some friends that we used to stay with up in Ventura. We were out there and they were like, oh, we got this great coffee place. Well, where is it? Well, it's in Beverly Hills. That's 50. I said, that's 50 miles away. And they're like, they looked at me like, well, yeah, it's only 50 miles, I drive 50 miles and I'm halfway to the Pennsylvania or Indiana border, depending on the direction I go. So, so 30 miles away, Syria was starting to fall apart. And in the last 13 years, 65 to 70% of Syrians have been displaced, meaning they don't live where they used to live.
Right.
It was a country of 22 million. It's now a country of 13 million.
Wow. Do you think Erdogan's licking his chops at this right now?
Absolutely. And maybe 1 million have been killed.
Mm-hmm.
And we know that Europe is being torn apart by the immigration of Syrians into, and Putin and Assad went in and cleared out whole Sunni towns, villages, and cities. Go look at the images of them. They're bombed to smithereens. And the reason they did that was they wanted the Sunnis to leave and go someplace else and be somebody else's problem. Now, those are Sunnis, and they were working with the Iranians who are Shia, and the Iranians were working with the Alawite Islamic guys like Assad.
Right.
And by the way, the Shia think that the Alawites are heretics, but they'll work with them if it's going to get them a way to go against Israel. They'll unite in that area.
Oh man, they will go to the gully for that.
So I've been watching Erdogan for 16, 17 years. He's 2 days younger than I am, by the way. So he's 70 years old also. I think he looks a lot older than I do, by the way, but that's
I thought he was like 90. No,
he's 70 like me. And he's an Islamist. He's Muslim Brotherhood. He wants to establish an Islamic caliphate. That's always been his goal. When he was a young person, he used to ride the ferries in Istanbul across the Bosporus, standing on the bow of the ship reciting the Quran. He won awards for reciting the Quran.
Wow.
He's very strict Islamist.
Right.
I have one of the creepiest videos I have is of him visiting the Grand Mosque in Mecca and kissing the black stone.
Yikes.
It just really creeps me out.
Mm-hmm.
But he's wanted to establish the caliphate. So let me give you a quick recap of the history that's important. So in 2016, they attempted a coup against Erdogan. He was able to put that down. In part, it wasn't really well organized, but some of the videos of them putting down this coup attempt, this rebellion, are pretty. I had them. I mean, they were brutal. I mean, people being cut in half by gunfire from helicopters and that type of thing when they're protesting on a bridge in Istanbul. And he put it down, but then he knew that he had a problem. So he changed the constitution so that the top person in the government was no longer the prime minister, it was going to be the president. And he's changed the constitution since to allow him to continue to be president beyond his term. They've changed the term limits that he was supposed to be subject to. So he's
basically under dictator rule.
he is. He's jailed more journalists than any other country in the world since 2016.
Yep.
The way the Turkish government was structured after the start of the secular country of Turkey in 1924 under a guy named Ataturk, he wanted to get rid of the Islamic influence. He banned women from wearing the hijab. He banned men from wearing the fez, the Muslim hat. And he Erdogan then but they set up the military to be kind of a bulwark against somebody taking the country back to Islamic. So what Erdogan did was he went in, and there were a number of times throughout the history of my lifetime of coups in Turkey that were led by the military to tamp down a guy who was becoming Islamic. Erdogan knew that was a problem, so he completely remade the military into Islamic guys. He jailed people, he tried them, he convicted them. He was brutal. And he remade Turkey.
Wow.
After the coup, he created a private security force called Sadat, S-A-D-A-T. My friend Jonathan Spire has written about this. Very interesting history. He put his most trusted military advisor as head of Sadat. They sent 5,000 private military contractors, kind of like a BlackRock or the Russian Wagner force. You hire these private military guys and you send them someplace, and then you can say, I don't know what they're doing there. They're operating their own. I have nothing to do with those guys. You have plausible deniability. Sent 5,000 guys into Libya during the Libyan-Syria war, which started, by the way, back with an incident in a place called Benghazi when that Hillary Clinton person was the Secretary of State. Erdogan saw an opportunity to move into the oil-rich areas of Libya, sent his private military contractors in there. And about 2019, the head of Sadat, his trusted military advisor, said in a speech that the purpose of what they were trying to do was they were preparing the way for the coming of the Mahdi. This messianic.
They're rebuilding the Ottoman Empire. He wants to do right.
Right, but they believe that they're going to bring the Mahdi, just like the imams that Jimmy Carter helped put in place in Iran want the Mahdi to come also. Now, they don't agree on aspects of the Mahdi, but Erdogan is a Mahdi guy. Ayatollah Khamenei is a Mahdi guy. The guys in Yemen are Mahdi guys. And they think they're going to bring this all about by causing chaos. So Erdogan by the way, when his military advisor says this, it causes a lot of political blowback on Erdogan, because it's like, it's not time yet, guys. You can't do this yet. So the guy got fired. But it's like all these deep state in the United States, the people never seem to go away. The deep state in Turkey never seems to go away. So Erdogan, during the course, and so, Assad had this civil war. Russia came in to help. Russia had 62,000 troops there at one point in time, mostly Wagner Group and mercenaries and other people. And they helped put down the rebellion of the rebels. And then we had the problem with ISIS and that type of thing. And everybody was fighting against ISIS. But ISIS never really went away. The Islamist guys that formed ISIS and then Al-Qaeda and a group called Al-Nusra, they eventually formed a group called HTS, of which this guy that you see in the news now, Al-Jilani, the head of the rebels, is in charge. He's been funded, directed, and supported by Erdogan. Erdogan some people told Assad, you need to reach out to Erdogan. This is a few months ago. And Assad said, no, I don't like him. I'm not going to talk to him. And then when Israel had success after success after success after success, this incredible operation that just was declassified over the weekend in Syria, I don't know if you've read about that yet. They sent 120 aircraft, helicopters and aircraft into Syria, 25 miles from the Russian naval base at Tartus, and they took out an Iranian missile manufacturing facility.
Oh, beautiful.
In Syria. And the headlines in Israel Hayom the other day said, biggest since Entebbe. In other words, this is the stuff that Israel's done over the last 4 months. I was talking to somebody yesterday. I said maybe I said it on Tom. You could make a whole season or 2 or 3 of Netflix shows explaining that it would be these incredible dramatic things that Israel has done in its war against these Islamic people over the last 4 months. It would fill up years of TV time on Netflix and whatever.
Yeah.
And part of it would be, I'm sure that if you brought like the pager thing to a guy in Hollywood and said, hey, I want the story about we're gonna plant explosives in all these pagers, and these pagers are gonna go off, and they're pretty much only gonna hurt the bad people, and they're gonna blind them, and because they've been telling us, in their speeches, they're gonna blind us. Well, let's blind them.
Mm-hmm.
And you presented that script to a guy in Hollywood, and you say, listen, I can't make a movie about this because you have to have it has to be somewhat real to be believable, because it's unbelievable what they've done in the last 4 months.
Yeah.
Then they took out Hania in Iran. They took out leadership of Hezbollah in Lebanon. Then they took out Nasrallah in Lebanon. 43 tons or 84 tons of bombs dropped on one place in Lebanon, in Beirut, Lebanon. And Nasrallah people were trying to tell Nasrallah, hey, Nasrallah, you need to leave. They're coming after you. He says, no, I know the Israelis. They'll never come after me. Well, they did come after him. And they took out all these people. They completely decimated the leadership of Hezbollah. They took out all their weapons. Then the Turkish-backed rebels took over. I was looking at a Turkish paper today, Vinny. So interesting. This stuff is fascinating to me.
Oh, yeah.
I've been watching Turkey for a long time. So on this Turkish language newspaper, I can't remember which one, there's a picture of Putin, and he looks angry. And he's saying, there were 30,000 Syrian army troops in Damascus, and they ran away. There were 4,000 Syrian Hezbollah fighters in Damascus, and they ran away.
Mm.
And the rebels came in and took over Damascus. Now, how many people do you think they brought to defeat an army of 30,000 Syrians and 4,000 Hezbollah? 350.
Wow.
And so the headline is, Putin is like, can you believe it? They took over Damascus with 350. And we had to evacuate 4,000 Hezbollah fighters. We've evacuated our stuff. They've pulled out. And then today there was a news report, can't remember where I read it, that Iran has now pulled all of their people out of Syria.
Wow.
And Erdogan is running the show.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And he wants to establish the caliphate. So Israel saw this coming. And part of the reason why the rebels moved was because they saw that Israel had completely decimated the Iranian forces.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't think the Russians would fight, and they didn't think the Syrian army would fight. So they took over Syria in like 4 days.
That's fast. With 350 men.
Yeah, I mean, the roads are pretty good up there, but you're talking about they moved 350 men in Damascus and took it over. And Erdogan's been pushing this. So you saw the thing that I put up with Tom Hughes.
Yes, I did.
They had a big demonstration in Istanbul a week ago tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
And the title of the march was "A Sun Rises," and the picture is the sun is half Turkish, half Palestinian flag. And it's interesting, the protest.
So what do we call that? Turkistinian?
Yeah. Well, Turkey just in July issued education regulations that the textbooks, and James and Cadiz and Tom Hughes have talked about this. I've talked about this. We talk about Gog and Magog in Ezekiel 38.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I agree with him that Magog is the Central Asian Stan republics. Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan, Tajikistan, that's this Stan and that Stan.
Mm-hmm.
Because they're Islamic.
Yep.
And they're Turkish. The Turks came from that area and colonized the area of modern day Turkey. They're colonialist power. And then they created the caliphate that went all the way down into Saudi Arabia, controlled Mecca and Medina. They were in charge of the holy sites of Mecca and Medina and Jerusalem for centuries. The walls of Jerusalem, you see, were built by Suleiman the Magnificent back in the, 1500s, 500 years ago.
Yeah.
So so Erdogan is so in this poster for the demonstration on January 1st, they have three big symbols. They have the sun, half Turkish, half Palestinian flag, and they have three other symbols. They're buildings. One is Hagia Sophia.
Mm-hmm.
And above it, it says, "Yesterday, Hagia Sophia." I think we need to understand the importance of the symbolism in the words that are chosen by the Erdogan people.
Man.
Yesterday, Hagia Sophia. What is the Hagia Sophia? Hagia Sophia is an Orthodox church. It was built 1,500 years ago, roughly. It is the largest church ever built in the history of Christianity. Now, we can argue about whether their theology is correct and Eastern Orthodox and all that. Okay, that's not the point. The point is, to Erdogan, an Islamist, he thinks they're Christian. So the poster and the demonstration in Istanbul, led by Erdogan's son a week ago, said, "Yesterday, Hagia Sophia. We have taken over Christianity." And 4 years ago, now almost 5 years ago, Erdogan turned the Hagia Sophia. It was a church, then a mosque, then a museum after the Ataturk took over 100 years ago. But 4 years ago, Erdogan went in and he turned the largest church in Christendom ever built into a mosque. This is incredibly significant in the way the Muslims think. And the Turks aren't Arabs, they're Muslims.
Mm-hmm.
So yesterday, Christianity. Then the middle is a tower from the Umayyad Mosque in Damascus. And the poster says, "Today, Damascus." So what's just happened is Turkish-backed rebels have taken over Damascus in dramatic fashion.
Wow.
And the Umayyad Mosque, that is where this Jalani guy went immediately to speak. So you need to understand the symbolism of what they're doing. So, and by the way, this Umayyad Mosque was Shia Islam coming out of Persia. They had a massive empire that ruled all the way into southern France. And it was, and so here it is. Yesterday, Christianity. Today, Shia Islam. And then the other picture is the Dome of the Rock on the Temple Mount in Jerusalem. And it says, "Tomorrow, Al-Aqsa." Meaning Christianity, Shia Islam, Jerusalem, and the Jews.
Boy. Trying to cut them down just like that, huh?
I think this is incredibly significant stuff.
Oh, it is. It is. And it seems like it's lining up.
And then today it's reported that Iran's pulled their people out. And so many years ago, a guy named Chuck Missler, I don't know if you ever heard of Chuck.
Oh, he was great. Chuck Missler, yeah.
He was a friend, and I was at a dinner with him. Me and Bill Caney were sitting at a table, just Chuck, Bill, and I. And I remember this very vividly. And I said, Chuck, are you excited about all this stuff? This is like 2007, 2008 in Phoenix. And I said, are you excited about all the stuff you see? And he goes, well, yeah, but I'm really watching Turkey. And when I see Turkey start to flip, I'm going to get really excited because then I think the end is really close. Well, Chuck's with the Lord now, but I've been watching Turkey ever since that conversation, very doggedly.
Yeah.
And so you're seeing the symbology of how the Muslims think symbolically. So when you go to Jerusalem, if you're ever going out of Jerusalem on Route 60 to the north, like up towards Shiloh, up towards where Ramallah is, the quote Fakistinian capital. They're in, I don't know if I've ever mentioned this before, but I was with Joel Kramer, and he said, look at that building over there. It's just the steel superstructure of a building, steel skeleton. He goes, that's a very significant building. I said, why? He said, well, back in 1967, they were building a palace for King Hussein of Jordan. I said, so? Well, the 67 war, they lost that land and they had to stop building the mosque, but the palace. But what's most important is where that palace was being built. It was being built over an ancient city called Gibeah.
Oh.
Gibeah was the tribal capital of the tribe of Benjamin.
Yes, it was.
There's a very famous Benjamite, whatever, from Gibeah. His name was King Saul, the first king of Israel. So the symbolism of what Hussein was doing was, I'm building my palace on top of where your first king came from because I'm superior to your first king, Israel.
Basically, he was going to disrespect the king, the first king.
Well, that's what he was doing. And so there's this symbolism that's still there today, this unfinished palace that's just sitting there on, it's just about the highest point in Jerusalem. You can see everything in Jerusalem from up there. Right. But a lot of people don't, and so that's the Muslim mindset. So that's what. So when Erdogan comes out with this poster, Tomorrow al-Aqsa, what did Hamas call their invasion into Israel? Al-Aqsa flood. Because it's about Jerusalem. When all of the Hezbollah killers were killed by Israel and Lebanon, what did their memorial pages say on the Hezbollah website? He was martyred. He was martyred. It had a picture of the Hezbollah symbol and the Dome of the Rock. Every one of their memorial pages, every single one said he was martyred on the road to Jerusalem. That's what this is all about that's going on over there.
Yeah.
And so Israel is Israel's amazing. When they saw an opportunity, they didn't want these Islamists to get hold of all that, Syrian and Russian Iranian military equipment. So they've gone in and they've just obliterated it.
Oh yeah, that's for sure.
They took over a little sliver of the Golan Heights because of some issues. So they're not taking over Syria. That's, some people are claiming that, but this is. So, if you were ranking what's happened over the last 4 months on the scale of how important is this in end time Bible prophecy, I'd say it's a 10.
Oh yeah,
for the last 4 months, it's been an incredible few months. And it's interesting because we did a podcast out there in California in November. We didn't even talk about Syria.
No.
It wasn't on anybody's radar. And 4 weeks later, Syria had fallen to these Islamist rebels that Erdogan's been funding and training and planning for the last 5 years. Everybody thought, oh, the Syrian civil war thing, it's settled down. Putin's there. Nobody's going to do anything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, when
Man,
people
and
say
you know
that
what?
when people say that nothing's going to happen, then that's probably when you really need to pay attention.
Yeah, big time. And it's funny. And when that happened, I'm like, we should have been watching that.
So that's what I've encouraged everybody to do is watch Turkey, watch the situation in the Middle East. And now you're going to throw into the middle of this a guy named Donald John Trump. And I will tell you that I'm not going to predict what's going to happen over the next 13 days, let alone the next 3 months.
Mm-hmm.
But you're going to see a lot of significant things. And there is word today that the Biden administration,
Mm-hmm.
is there's things being orchestrated to happen at the UN that are against Israel over the next 13 days.
And Guterres is loving that.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not sure exactly what it will be. I think it will be something about blaming Israel for everything and insisting that we return. This is what's so crazy about this. You know, you hear that we need to return to the 1967 border lines. Well, wait a minute. I just told you a story about King Hussein of Jordan,
Mm-hmm.
who was building in the Arab side of the 1967 lines because he thought that land was under his control, but he's not the king of Palestine. He's the king of Jordan.
Mm-hmm.
Jordan was running the show there in 1967. They were banning Jews from the Western Wall. They destroyed one of the most important synagogues if you go to Israel, you'll find in the Jewish quarter of the old city,
Mm-hmm.
the buildings are pretty new. That's because they were obliterated by Jordan between 1948 and 1967.
Man.
So, so there's a square there where there's this big new synagogue that's built in Jerusalem in the Jewish quarter. I was there in 1995, and it was just it was like an arch. That was all that was left of the synagogue that had been there. It was like a memorial. Now there's this giant synagogue that's been built there. So these things, you got to kind of take a immediate view and a long view of all the stuff that's going on in there, and then unpack it in light of the prophecies that have been existing for 2,000 years.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So,
man, everything is like falling into place as far as I'm concerned. This is great stuff.
Yeah. I haven't even looked at your chat. So anyway, so I've talked way too long tonight, but I just would encourage people to really, really pay attention to the things that's going on, because I think they're very significant prophetically. And I will say, so the first time I went to Jerusalem, walked down the Mount of Olives, came into the old city, walked down to the Western Wall,
and
turned around from the Western Wall and looked to the west, Western Wall of the Temple Mount, and looked towards the old city of Jerusalem.
Right.
And at that time, there was a big sign on the wall, a big yellow sign. And in Hebrew, it said, Hakuna Laviat HaMashiach. Now, if you think my American is bad, my Hebrew is even worse. Hakuna Laviat HaMashiach. Prepare for the coming of Messiah. So here we sit almost exactly 30 years after my first trip to Israel.
Right.
The Jewish people are talking about the coming of Messiah.
Mm-hmm.
Erdogan the Iranians are talking about the coming of the Mahdi.
Mm.
And by the way, Islamic eschatology is I don't want to just say it's wrong. It's like a completely flip-flop version of what the Bible says. It's completely 180.
Oh yeah, it's a farce.
So so it's not so much that I believe what they say, and not that it's right, but I believe it because they believe that it's right.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's sort of like I said, the Hagia Sophia. We can argue about whether the theology of the people that built Hagia Sophia is right or wrong. Probably errors there.
Right.
But what we can't deny is the fact that all the Muslims in the world think that that's one of the biggest symbols of Christianity on planet Earth.
Mm-hmm.
And they want to take it over, and they have taken it over and possess it. So this whole thing about the Temple Mount in Jerusalem is about superiority of Islam.
Yep. That's exactly
why they call
what
it
it is.
Al-Aqsa flood. And so when the Bible says all nations will be gathered against Israel, the simple interpretation of those prophecies is that all nations will be gathered against Israel in the end times. And so you may see a manifestation of that at the UN in the next 10 days.
Mm-hmm. It's forming already.
Right.
As we speak. Yeah.
So, So I see somebody asked in the chat, well, why would you reinvent the whole thing? Listen, Satan knows that he's got to deceive people, so he'll make up one that's, completely contrary to Christianity. It denies Jesus and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It's demonically inspired and created.
Right.
So,
mm-hmm.
And so here we are. I'm sitting here in 2025. When the world is in turmoil and
total chaos.
The leader of Canada just is in the pride. Well, he's not gone yet. He's sort of dragging it out for a couple of months. I think that's strategic.
Mm-hmm.
So tomorrow night we're going to do a roundtable on technology and AI. And on January 20th, there'll be a couple big events to watch.
Yeah.
I will be inaugurated in Washington, D.C.
District of Criminals.
Yeah, but I think that there's going to be things, I'm transactional with Trump. There's things he does that I like. There's things that I really don't like.
Mm-hmm.
He's going to be doing stuff within 5 minutes of being sworn in. It's going to be head spinning, I think. You saw the news conference today. He's coming loaded for bear.
Mm-hmm.
And we're on the cusp of some pretty amazing things. Mm-hmm. And then the same day that Trump is being sworn in, a little meeting starts in Davos, Switzerland, the World Economic Forum.
Oh, yes. Those wonderful people.
And the theme of this conference this year is the age of intelligence.
Ooh.
And by the way, I don't know if you've been watching. So this week is the CES Consumer Electronics Show in Las Vegas.
In Las Vegas. Yeah, the Cena show. Yes.
Have you been watching the videos coming out of this, of the stuff that they're bringing out?
Oh man, it's mind blowing. If you guys haven't seen it, it is mind blowing.
Twitter has like and NVIDIA, they have like 20 things that they've announced since they're there.
Mm-hmm.
They're bringing out a laptop that's all NVIDIA chips. I believe it's going to cost $3,000.
Mm-hmm.
And it will be, at least if you believe Jason, the guy that's Jason Wang, is that his name?
Mm-hmm.
The head of NVIDIA. It will be 1,000 times more powerful than any other laptop on the planet.
Yeah.
And that's going to go into the hands of people around you. Wow. And that's not anywhere near what they're doing with technology in the big AI, and technology companies.
I remember being there about 15 years ago, and I saw the first phone that actually like folded, and it was really thin, and it came to fruition.
Yep.
Years later.
Well, it was 30 years ago. Well, 1993. Just before I went to DC for that trip where the Oslo Accords were. I got my first computer as a lawyer. My own first computer. A 386 processor, 2 megabytes of RAM, and a 40 megabyte hard drive. So I eventually became head of the technology committee at a law firm of 50 people, 90 users on the network. We had less than a gigabyte of storage space in all 90 computers in the server on the network. Less than a gigabyte. And now I've got a MacBook. I think I've got 64 gigabytes of RAM.
Yeah.
It's insane.
Yeah.
And that's 30 years.
Yeah.
And what you're going to see is you're going to see a compression, an acceleration of this stuff. Get ready for it.
Because now they can do terabytes of RAM.
And by the way, somebody's laughing in the chat about age of intelligence.
I
always say it's artificial intelligence. They'll never call it real wisdom because it's not.
It's not real wisdom. Never.
No, but so the example that somebody used to show exponential growth one time was this. Take Yankee Stadium. We can use this Yankee Stadium because I grew up around Cleveland, and the Yankee Stadium, that was the equivalent of the evil empire. Okay. The Yankees. So
that was you guys' arch nemesis.
Seal up Yankee Stadium, make it watertight, go to second base and drop a drop of water. And then a minute later, double it. So do 2 drops. Then 4, then 8, then 16, then 32, then 64. Okay. How long does it take before the stadium is overflowing with water?
Wow.
Adding, doubling it every minute. You know what the answer is? 49 minutes. The stadium is overflowing with water.
Wow.
And by the way, at minute 48, it's only half full. Because then you double it. And it overflows. That's an example of exponential growth. This is what we're seeing in computers, technology, and I would say the way these Bible prophecy things are lining up to be fulfilled.
Yeah, yeah. Who would have thought that we were able to have like cell phones that could launch the space shuttle?
Yeah. I saw a picture of the lady. She had stacks of paper around her. It was from the 60s. She was the one who wrote the program code. That was the program code she wrote for Apollo to go to the moon. It took stacks and stacks of paper like that. I can remember when I was doing research in graduate school back in the 80s or 70s at Indiana State. So not quite 50 years ago, but close. And we were using punch cards. Do you remember those?
Punch cards. Oh my goodness.
You had to take your data and go over to a special typewriter and punch in the data. Then you took all your cards and you ran them through a thing to make sure all the cards were entered right. And then you went to the computer center there in Terre Haute, Indiana, and dropped off your punch cards. And the next morning, about 11 o'clock, you could go down, and usually your thing had been processed overnight. But then you would find out, I had one punch card that was messed up. So then you would have to repeat the whole process, find the punch card, correct it, then drop it off and get your thing back the next day. That was
now we can do it in a matter of seconds.
Yeah, and you can. So I think we don't really I think it's very hard for us to wrap our heads around how fast all of this stuff is going to happen.
Information superhighway.
Yeah. So,
well, John, thank you so much for being on.
Thank you
for
for
a couple of hours.
Yeah. Well, we didn't get the whole time because my camera was screwing up.
Oh, okay.
I'm not sure what it must have been at your end.
yeah, it probably was.
It couldn't be me, but
yeah, these computers sometimes.
Yeah, and what's it's funny. I was having trouble with my car one day, and I actually called the manufacturer, said my car's acting up. So you know what he told me to do? Pull over, turn it off, and then turn it back on. Reboot your car. And it worked. I don't know why, but it did. So
yeah, that's cool.
Anyway, Vinny, thanks a lot. But I've just encouraged people to really pay attention to what's going on because we are. Well, I'll go back to that sign in Jerusalem.
Mm-hmm.
Prepare for the coming of Messiah. That's what we ought to be doing.
Yep, that's it. That's what we should be doing at the end of the day. And John, would you please do us the honor and pray us out, my friend?
I will. Lord, thanks so much for our friends that have been listening tonight. Pray that this has been a blessing to them. We just pray, Lord, that you'll help us all to remember that we should be preparing for the coming of Messiah, looking forward to it, preparing for it, acting like it, and sharing our faith and the gospel of Jesus Christ with those around us. Give us opportunities to do that and bless us in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Ladies and gentlemen, and also this will be airing on Spotify, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, and wherever you should download podcasts in about, I'd say, half an hour from now. So for those of you who watch live and will be watching later, thank you so much. God bless. And we will see you tomorrow on Rumble. Yeah. Specialty Rumble show on Wednesday. That's going to be interesting. Thank you so much, John.
Thanks, Vinny.